All right, we're starting.
Defense, call your first witness.
The defense would like to call Riley Faith to the stand.
All right.
Could you please state your name to the court?
Yes, my name is Riley Faith.
Mr. Faith, are you currently employed?
Yes, I'm a tenured professor at the University of California's Berkeley School. I'm a tenured professor at the University of California's Graduate School of Journalism. Aside from that, I've had previous positions at Oxford, University of Tokyo, and New York.
And do you have any area of specialty within your field?
Yes, well, while I've taught many classes in journalism, my focus mainly is on journalistic ethics and journalism standards.
Are you published in the field?
Yes, I've written over 100 articles on journalism. I'm also a frequent commentator on television when the media itself becomes a story. Aside from that, I write a weekly newspaper.
And have you ever received any awards or distinctions in regards to your work?
I received the prestigious Maureen Kingsley Award for promoting ethical journalism and the Francis Leo Award for excellent journalism.
Congratulations, Mr. Faith.
Thank you.
And what is your connection to today's case at hand?
Well, I was hired to determine whether or not BNN complied with generally recognized ethical standards of journalism when making the broadcast reporting Queen Hamilton's death after his debate with Ms. Walton on September 24, 2006.
And do you employ any certain steps or procedures when analyzing these kinds of cases? I'm simply asking what he does in order to determine.
You can
his
say
role.
no, right? Okay. And your objection is overruled.
So, Mr. Faith, do you employ any certain steps in order to analyze the situation?
Well, yes. Whenever I'm hired as an expert witness to testify in a case, such as this one, I basically look at 3 steps in my evaluation. These are the conflict of interest, the thoroughness of the investigation, and basically the publication.
And Mr. Faith, earlier you mentioned journalistic standards.
Yes.
Could you elaborate a little bit for the court?
Yes, of course. These are basically a compilation of ethical standards that come from the BBC Association Code of Ethics, the Radio Television News Network Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct, and the Guidelines for Breaking News Events.
Now, Mr. Faith, I'd like to turn your attention to today's case. Did you do anything prior in preparation to come to court today?
Absolutely. I spent a total of 26 hours in preparation for today's case. I reviewed the affidavits of Kip Berkshire, president of BNN, Reagan Thomas, the reporter on Scene that night, Jan Patel, the janitor, Fran Martin, the producer for BNN, and Drew Walton.
And did you look at anything else?
Yes, I reviewed the paper transcript and associated DVD copy, as well as the Kip Berkshire press release and the Fran Martin memo.
Did you interview anyone prior to coming to court today?
No, I did not. Since some of the parties were represented by counsel, I chose in the interest of fairness to not interview anyone.
Are interviews a standard process in analyzing the situation?
Interviews really, it depends on the situation. In this case, I found it not necessary to interview anyone as I had all the affidavits and necessary information to make a sound judgment regarding this case.
Now, you mentioned 3 steps earlier. Did you employ those steps in regards to analyzing this case?
Yes, I did.
I'd like to break those up then,
Okay.
and start with bias, which was your first step.
Yes.
Did you notice any bias in regards to Reagan Thomas, BNN's reporter on scene that evening?
No, as part of Reagan Thomas, I did not notice any bias. Reagan Thomas did appear irritated when Ms. Walton refused to answer his question.
Circulation. Response?
Well, Your Honor, as a part of his analytical responsibilities, he did have the opportunity to look at the affidavits, and in order, he, as an expert witness, was able to determine whether or not these sentiments came out in those affidavits and then were thusly transcribed into the broadcast.
He's an expert. He's giving his opinion, so objections overruled.
Please continue, Mr. Faith.
Yes, while Reagan Thomas did seem irritated by Ms. Walton's refusal to answer his questions, it's not clear whether this actually impacted his reporting of the story. Thomas did seem eager and enthusiastic to to further his career, but it's really unclear whether or not this actually affected the story.
And what about CEO Kit Berkshire? Did you find any bias in regards to her?
I did find some bias on the part of Kit Berkshire, mainly because of the past relationship Berkshire has had with Walton's family. This may not necessarily be Drew Walton herself, but this bias or conflict of interest is severely diminished by the fact that Berkshire told Reagan Thomas not to overstate the facts.
And
Your Honor, hearsay?
Your response?
again, this hearsay isn't for the truth of the matter asserted. It's simply the presence or the effect on the reader in this case, and his ability to draw a conclusion from there.
He's an expert. He's allowed to rely upon hearsay and any other information in writing his conclusions. So whether it's hearsay or not, it's so I'm going to overrule your objection.
Mr. Booth, I'd like to now turn your attention to your second step that you employed, which was investigating the adequacy of the investigation.
Yes.
Did you notice anything in regards to the interview process?
Yes, I actually find the interview process to be one of the strong points of Thomas's investigation. Reagan Thomas interviewed Reagan Thomas spoke with 3 eyewitnesses as well as 2 police officials. The police officials were probably the best 2 police sources. Reagan Thomas's interview of the 3 witnesses also appears to have been sufficient.
And did you notice any major flaws in regards to the interview process?
If there was one major flaw in this investigation, in Thomas's investigative process, it was his absence at the Walton press conference after the incident. However, this is a shortcoming on the part of Thomas and not necessarily BNN.
Why do you say that?
Well, BNN's president, Kit Berkshire, watched the press conference from a separate feed. So this means that someone from BNN was actually watched the press, paid attention to the press conference before making the decision to run a story.
And how do you, as a professional, feel that Reagan Thomas dealt with Jan Patel?
While I do agree that Reagan Thomas should not have dismissed Jan Patel, I also understand that a journalist can discount a source's testimony. This can happen for reasons such as the desire to achieve fame or bias.
So, can you please elaborate a little bit more on what other reasons could be absolutely credible reasons for discounting a source?
Basically, if a source is deemed, basically, a journalist has a judgment call, has to make a judgment call, and part of a judgment call involves discounting a source for credibility issues or a conflict of interest or bias.
Now, I'd like to direct your attention to the third step, which was analyzing the actual broadcast or publication. May I please have a moment to set up the courtroom for the music room demonstrative?
Sure.
When they set the courtroom, do you stop the time?
I think so.
You gotta love all these vague.
Just objections.
I just think so,
To
but
be on the safe side. Let's just do objections.
you gotta love how it fails to write in all these situations.
All right. I don't know how that's